With all due deference to your ruling, Mr. Speaker, I venture to submit that the truth in the Wheeler case is so bound up with the government's proposals that it would hardly be changing the subject to discuss it. So, if the honourable members wish, and with the Speaker's permission...
Mr. Disraeli.
First, Her Majesty's government deprecates any suspicion of an Irish conspiracy against Her Majesty. No grounds have been uncovered for any such assumption. In fact, so far as can be ascertained, Wheeler was quite alone in his actions, and alone must bear the entire censure and punishment. The House of Commons may be a strange place to discuss the conduct of a mudlark, but it is perhaps the best of all places to examine certain aspects of this particular mudlark's conduct. For here they are placed not only before the honourable members, but also before the entire nation. Now, I confess I'm as puzzled as anyone by some of the mystery of young Wheeler. How, for one thing, did this child escape us? How did he manage to reach the age of 10 in the face of all that we did to prevent it? I ask you to think how hard society tried to kill him. It laid an ambush for him at his birth, surrounding his cradle with rats and vermin. It sent off gases from foul drains to pollute the air he breathed. It tried to poison his mother's milk through her drinking water, but only succeeded in poisoning his mother. She died of typhus before he could walk, according to the police investigation. And as there's no record of a father, his government was spared the necessity of a second murder in the same family. So now that he was an orphan, alone, defenseless, and entirely at the mercy of his country, it went further. It attacked his spirit and his soul. It taught him nothing. It withheld the word of God from him. And in the end, it sent him into the Thames to be a mudlark, barefoot and clothed in the merest rags, subject daily to cold and damp and fever, and in the warrens and lanes of the waterfront, it exposed him to the worst influences of immorality and evil, and, most final of all, it denied him hope. Now, as a result of this indifference and cruelty, there seems to have developed in this small boy an unnatural attitude toward England. Unnatural because, in spite of all that it has done to him, he seems to love it. So one day he raised his head from the river and looked about him and walked out of the mud and went to see his queen. Someone had told him Her Majesty was the mother of England. We've all heard this expression, and of course we do not take it literally. But this unenlightened little orphan did. But where could he see her? Passing through the streets of London, as once she showed herself to her people, in the Green Park where older boys could just remember having seen her, in any public place whatever, where once her loyal subjects gathered to shout their respect and affection for their sovereign. No longer. Never now in many empty years. So he must go where her grief keeps her. Now, Windsor's walls are high, but they were no barrier to Wheeler. Her Majesty's foot guard, I'm told, are the finest soldiers in England, but he passed them as though they'd not been there. So one evening he arrived, trailing mud into the throne room itself, and only by the merest, the most touching of mischances did he fail of his ultimate goal. At the very moment of triumph, the child fell asleep. Other questions remain that you may answer for yourselves. For example, has this small Briton been brought to our consideration for himself alone, or for the consideration of all British children who are as he is. There's a singularly rough and robust doctrine held by some in this House. Though the country is overpopulated in relation to its food supply, a correction of the unfortunate situation may be safely left to the law of the survival of the fittest, though, if you'll pardon me, I've never heard overpopulation complained of in time of war. I can't remember having heard, for instance, that there were too many Britons at Waterloo. But this, I have no doubt, is a comforting doctrine, by which those who hold it may sleep well at night, secure in the knowledge that a natural law of the jungle will presently simplify their problems in arithmetic. But under this doctrine, Wheeler shouldn't even be alive, much less sitting on the throne of England. Is there then a flaw in this concept? And has Wheeler the right to be alive, in open defiance of a patriotic obligation to be dead? Has he no consideration for the mathematicians whose calculations may be muddled and confused by his stubborn failure to expire according to plan? For myself, of course, I prefer another solution based on the sensible Englishman's concern for his animals. We see the results of it all round our countryside. And our dogs, our cattle, our sheep, our horses. It's unfortunate, in fact, that Wheeler isn't a horse. But when it comes to horses, Britons and sportsmen would never permit such outrageous handicapping. And do we go too far, then, in proposing to apply the principles of this art to human beings? Are we rash to the point of madness to try to equalize the conditions of the struggle for existence? But the House must not suppose that I rose here to defend Wheeler. There are, however, those of us who believe that the true wealth of Britain is British character. And by drawing attention to certain evidences of that character, as they seem to shine through the deed that Wheeler has done, I have sought only to advance the cause of British children, among whom Wheeler is but a halfpenny bit of our great capital investment in the future. Nothing I have said can alter the fact that Wheeler has broken the law and must be punished. Nor must it be supposed that the government commends him to his country's mercy. Indeed, were I defending him, I could not have said any of this. In his defense, I would have been reduced to one single argument: that if in this case a conspiracy existed as is charged, then that conspiracy was not against the Queen, but against the boy. And I should not have appealed to his country for mercy, but for justice.
Yeah.